I want to talk to you about mental health and mental illness. So although people use these words interchangeably, they are not the same. So as a health practitioner and in functional medicine, when we describe mental health, we talk about the function of the brain, its relationship to the gut, and the quantitative and qualitative measure of the brain and the gut and its ability to measure the wellness, the immunity, and the resilience of how the brain and the gut work together. That is mental health. When we talk about mental illness, we speak about the quantitative and qualitative measure of the brain and of the gut and its relationship, and it's the gut and brain's inability to achieve resilience, wellness, and immunity. So when we think about symptoms or symptomatology that defines mental illness, it's so critical that we look above and beyond the symptoms and dig deeper to try to identify the precursors that lead to those symptoms. And why would that be? Well, when we talk about mental health is actually a very positive, very empowering title, word, noun, adjective, definition, description. It has all kinds of neat possibilities when we think about mental health as wellness, resilience, and immunity. Why? Because with really positive or good or with genuine mental health, you not only gain wellness, resilience, immunity, but also you have greater chance of protecting yourself from illness and disease. When we get stuck only thinking about the symptoms of mental illness and tying it to mental health, we all start to get tripped up and confused, really trying to figure out what is it really that we're really trying to measure? What is it really that we're trying to value? And what are the interventions or lifestyles or work styles that we're trying to create to complement mental health or in even mental illness? So I break it down this way so people really have a really strong understanding in a functional, integrative sense of what mental health really is. So let's define it again. It's the quantitative and qualitative measure of your resilience, your immunity, and your wellness as it relates to the relationship between your brain and your gut. If your gut and your brain are both demonstrating wellness, resilience, and immunity, we now know that there is less of a chance of a person demonstrating symptomatology of symptoms that would lead one to suffer, lead one to not be well, to not be resilient, to not be immune to disease or illness. In addition, it can also lead to what is defined in the DSM-5 psychiatric manual as symptomatology. And of the different levels of symptomatology comes a diagnosis, right? It's like the pedagogy, the title of what the symptoms stand for. But let's go back to mental health. So we all want to have fantastic mental health. We all want to have this strength or integrity that protects us, prevents, and allows us to be free or at risk from any type of sickness or disease. With that, some of us are ailing and we might have an issue going on, let's just say, with our gut, that immediately people think, oh my goodness, I have a mental illness, and really I just have a concern, or we even call a temporary insult to our mental health. For example, stress. Stress is commonly confused with mental illness, commonly. It's like probably the biggest thing, the most common thing that I have to redefine and work on for people. At the same time, stress brings on a massive insult, not only to your thinking in the way that you interpret emotions or express emotions, or how those emotions then manifest into behaviors. But let's go and pivot to another direction. It actually causes a great insult to your gut. So anybody who understands how the gut works, we know that there's a community of bacteria, your microbiome, that actually works as security for your gut. But when you're suffering just stress, you have a parent that you care for. I've been through this. Parent care, I've cared for my mother for quite some time. It brings on stress, not only worrying what's going to happen to the person that you love and care for, but also the emergencies, the hustle, the planning, the prepping. It's a lot of work. And what does that stress do? What not only manipulates the way your brain interprets information, things around you, we call them signals or details, but those signals and details now become interpreted into thoughts, and often they're negative thoughts. Dr. Daniel Amen, a very close colleague of mine, nails it. He talks about the automatic negative thoughts. I say the automatic negative thought syndrome, ants, right? So we suffer these ants, and then it manifests in behaviors. We get elevated, we get upset, we get impatient, we walk away, we go through a fight or flight, we freeze or fidget, we refuse. There's just a number of behavioral or disciplinary expressions that we demonstrate when we're feeling stressed. But let's go deeper. When we're stressed, our gut lacks blood flow and oxygen, and it insults the gut. So our gut starts to suffer. So, when people are maybe going on a date and they're nervous, they get butterflies, or you're going to go out on stage and present or perform, you get butterflies. And what do butterflies usually come from? Or what are they the result of? Typically, it's a lack of blood flow and oxygen being delivered to the gut as a result of stress. Let's do number 2. Your cortisol goes up with stress. So people's mental health is challenged by stress because your cortisol goes up. What does that mean? Your body interprets, right? All your senses, 5 senses. We know the 5 senses, but we have other senses too. Your body is a huge sensory organ. So as your body is interpreting information, it's trying to make sense of the information to not feel at risk. Risk could be anything from being suspicious and paranoid. It could be as mild as just being anxious, or it could actually be detecting illness or disease. So when our body is detecting something's not right, a stress hormone is boosted, and it's called cortisol. Your fight or flight, that's how most people know it. It's much more detailed and sophisticated than that. But when your cortisol is elevated, your body's alarm system is going off to develop strength. And what is the strength that it develops in order to build resilience, but not necessarily be well, but just resilience, tough, to try to create immunity and to try to create strength, where I use the word integrity, where it's just refusing to fail. Cortisol creates a glucose surge of sugar that gets pushed into your bloodstream, and that's where you get that strength. Now, it doesn't last very long, which then people go through, it's called a cortisol depletion. You go from being really, really strong to then feeling very tired, weak, withdrawn, fatigued is probably the best description of how this feels. And then we get this overload of emotion, because where our emotions felt like we were going to protect ourselves, we now feel defeated. We now feel rejected. We now feel insulted. We feel hopeless. And a lot of times we will feel sad, depressed. Immediately people think mental illness. Well, but your body just went through this really strong change in its trajectory in the way that it functions. And that was really more of a functional or integrative example that we use in functional medicine or in integrative health of mental health. It's your body's fight to try to overcome stress. But the treatment for stress can be completely different than the treatment for mental illness. Now, I'm constantly educating people to understand all the tools all the interventions and philosophies of all these different dimensions that affect our ability to function. And in using different definitions and different philosophies and trying to get people in a cognitive behavioral sense to really become more aware so they can put pieces together that allow them to be well because they're able to make really, really strong choices. Choices like getting on a sleep schedule, getting up and going to bed same time every night. Example of sleep schedule, but here we go. Ready? Promoting what's called the circadian rhythm. You don't want to lift weights at 9 o'clock at night when your cortisol levels are coming down. So through being educated, we know that we should lift a half hour after we get up in the morning when our cortisol levels are highest, right? We got this push of sugar and we take advantage of this energy and strength that we get. Others, our eating patterns. We want to structure our eating. We want to eat on a very structured schedule. We want to eat certain foods. We want to eat them at certain times. We want to get half of our body weight in ounces of water ingested every single day at a minimum. I always say half your body weight in ounces of water plus an extra 16-ounce bottle of water just to play it safe. Supplements. We need supplements. Your body, if you're in the United States, and I know people follow me from all over the world, and most of my clients are from out of the country, Australia, Italy, Colombia, they're all over the place. We all know that the United States and people in the other countries make fun of us because we're so sick, but we're so deficient in minerals and nutrients that are supposed to be in our bodies. Vitamins, we're not low, we're deficient. Things like magnesium, vitamin D, zinc, omega-3. So we need to supplement those details, right? That really help boost our body's ability to function. And why is that? So we develop wellness, resilience, and immunity. And what does that define? It defines mental health. So if we're struggling in our mental health, and I'm just giving you a few examples, and we're eating the wrong things, like some of you, I get lots of clients, are eating meat, red meat, 4 days a week. Craziest thing in the world, the worst thing in the world. So that alone could really make you feel overwhelmed, tired, sick. Next thing you know, your digestion is not being boosted and it just kind of stops working. Now you get an autoimmune reaction. Now your cortisol levels are high. Now you're not sleeping well at night. Now you're irritable in the morning. You have foggy brain. The doctor immediately thinks you have ADHD. The doctor thinks you're depressed. Now you're anxious because your cortisol levels are wavering. They don't know if they're supposed to stay high, get low, maintain some sort of homeostasis in between. All it knows is the body's detecting it is just not well. So what are we talking about? We're talking about wellness that is delivered through the understanding of what mental health is and how it works. So we want to spin it to make sure that everyone understands that mental health is the qualitative and quantitative measure of wellness and resilience and immunity. Not just a list of symptoms indicating that you're just not feeling well. Thank you.